welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday. I'm Anthony. He's Ron. And here we are, uncovering the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream. And although we are increasingly becoming the mainstream ourselves, as you probably know, Ron, more people are watching Midas Touch streams than watching the legacy networks now to get their news. And we're very grateful for that.
As they should.
As they should. Ron, of course, speaking as the editor-in-chief of MidasTouch.com. We have a lot to talk about. Of course, we're going to look to Trump's criminal trial in just a little while. We'll look at Rudy Giuliani, who is having to find himself a new job, and a whole lot more. But why don't we start with the breaking news that there are debates now, presidential debates, and Joe Biden has challenged Donald Trump to a debate, and Donald Trump has responded with his idea of what a debate should look like, and then the networks have stepped in, and now they have dates and times specifically. So just give us a kind of plotted history of how this has played out in the last 24 hours.
This has been played very masterfully by Biden in the Biden campaign. If you rewind back in January, March, when the Republican primaries were going on, and Trump was ducking all those primary debates, and he was getting a lot of heat. He was getting a lot of heat from DeSantis, from Haley, from other Republicans saying, "Why won't you debate?" And he kept saying over and over again, "I only want to debate Joe Biden." And then he started getting very brash with his pronouncements, both at rallies and on Truth Social. He said, anytime, any place, anywhere, anybody could host it, any network, any moderator, didn't matter. You name the time, place, the conditions, I'll be there, which is incredibly foolish because Trump doesn't debate. Trump interrupts, yells and screams, and creates a spectacle. So the terms of a debate with Trump are critical, are essential. If you debate Trump in front of a live audience with a moderator who's not going to control the situation, with a hot mic and all of that, in other words, the mic is not killed when he goes over time, that's perfect for Trump. But when him coming out and saying anytime, any place, any conditions, this allowed Biden to set the terms and to take away Trump's greatest weapons. And so what Biden has done is, okay, he agreed to CNN and ABC moderators and hosts, no live audience. So Trump can't station people in the audience to clap and cheer and disrupt and boo and all of that.
Which is what he did on that recent Fox town hall, of course.
That's right.
Where there were plants in the audience and the whole thing was sycophant. Yeah.
Can't do that. And the third condition is, as soon as the time is up, his mic gets cut. Both of their mics get cut.
Yeah.
Trump in 2020, the last debate with Biden, interrupted Biden 128 times. So in theory, that is not going to be able to happen. And so we're even seeing right away, as soon as Biden agreed to this and Trump said deal, Trump has already started to backpedal.
Yeah.
And he's called for a Fox debate with Bret Baier as the moderator. So look, this is a masterstroke by the Biden campaign. They got exactly what they wanted, and they should be very happy with the situation.
Let's take a look at the the viral video of Joe Biden that started this whole volley going on.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Little jab there to Wednesday being the only day that he's not in court for his criminal trial. What do you, from a strategic perspective, what did you think of that video from Joe Biden?
Well, he's knows how to play. He's figured out how to play Donald Trump, and honestly, he learned that from Lincoln Project, who did a lot of this stuff back in 2020 with the commercials that they look. Lincoln Project, a lot of their they got criticism. A lot of their commercials were more directed towards an audience of one, which was Donald Trump, rather than voters in certain situations. And they were criticized for that, but you can't argue with the success. They know exactly how to target a message in an ad to get under Trump's skin and to make him behave irrationally. And I think the Biden campaign has taken a cue from that strategy of how to needle Trump, how to get under his skin. And that's what Biden has been doing, and it's been working. And, you know, for Trump to agree to this format, which is the worst possible format, either shows he's just being completely brash and irrational and stupid, or he's being incredibly overconfident, because Trump cannot debate in a traditional format. And that's what these debates are going to be. They're not going to be wide open, anything goes. They're going to be very regimented with a lot of rules, which are good. They're rules to make sure that both sides get equal time, and this is done in a thoughtful and civilized way.
And you may remember back in 2016 when Trump was debating Hillary Clinton, and he was intimidating her. He was walking up to her, like almost pushing his body up against her back, like coming up behind her. And I guess, you know, he was willing to do that because she's female and he felt that he had authority over her, but also he knew her. You know, they did have a little history together, and she, I mean, this is just an aside, isn't it? But she's been putting out a few tweets in the last few days where she's really getting very, very vocal, and she told us exactly who Donald Trump was. And it turned out she was exactly right.
I can tell you that this subject came up a couple of days ago on Steve Bannon's show. I was watching it.
Right.
And he was bragging about the debate with Hillary and Trump when he brought a bunch of Bill Clinton's accusers to the first debate to rattle Hillary. And Bannon was laughing about how he brought them backstage, and Hillary saw Juanita Broderick and Paula Jones and the different women that have accused Bill of different things. And Paula Jones was yelling at Bill Clinton backstage, you raped me. I mean, this was in front of Hillary. So that's how they tried to rattle her before the debate. None of those kind of shenanigans are going to happen this time. And so that's why you got to have rules.
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump and rules are there's very little simpatico there. Let's look at the Truth Social post that he put out at, what was it, like 8:43 this morning, I think, Eastern time, where he wrote, "Crooked Joe Biden is the worst debater I have ever faced. He can't put two sentences together. Crooked is also the worst president in the history of the United States by far. It's time for a debate so that he can explain to the American people his highly destructive open border policy and ridiculous EV mandates, the allowance of crushing inflation, which is currently on the way down, high taxes, and his really weak foreign policy, which is allowing the world to catch on fire. I am ready and willing to debate Crooked Joe at the two proposed times in June and September. I would strongly recommend more than two debates for excitement purposes. A very large venue, although Biden is supposedly afraid of crowds. That's only because he doesn't get them. Just tell me when. I'll be there. Let's get ready to rumble." Doesn't quite sound the same in my voice, does it? I mean, this is all theatre, right? I mean, none of the stuff he says in there is really true, obviously, especially when he's talking about Joe Biden's record. But what I would say here is that, you know, Donald Trump, even with, like, you know, the legal cases and him refusing to give evidence, the guy is a coward. You know, everything he does is for show. And this tough guy and this strong man. But when it comes down to it, you know, Biden would actually give him a run for his money on a debate.
And he follows the exact same pattern every time. He did this before the 2020 debates. He did it before the State of the Union a few months ago, and he's doing it again now, which is he spends all this time in the lead up saying Biden is terrible debater, which that's probably Biden's number one strength. He's always been a great debater his whole life. So Biden's a terrible debater. What else does he say in there? He can't put two sentences together. Yeah. This kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, which is ironic considering that he can
it's absolutely the worst thing that you can do with politics is to do that, is to say, you know, he's terrible, he can't put two sentences together, and you constantly put that message out, because then when the person, as what happened in 2020, shows up and is articulate, who knows the issues, who can give and take, and who can say things off the cuff, the American public is saying, wait a minute, you've been telling us for 6 months this guy can't even talk. So he's lowering expectations for Biden, which is the exactly the opposite of what you want to do. But in 2020, what did he do? A few days before the debate, he then tried to reverse himself and start talking about what a seasoned debater Biden is and how much experience he has. And he's going to do it again this time. He did it before the State of the Union. Biden can't put two sentences together. He's low energy. He's done. He's senile. Biden gives a great speech. What does Trump do? He's on drugs. He says afterwards. So, he's making excuses after the fact. Look, a huge percentage, we've talked about this, of voters, swing voters, do not pay attention until the debates. They're going to check in for the first time. And what they have in their head is that Biden is old and senile and is going to get crushed in this debate and can't speak and can't walk and talk and all of that. This is what a lot of them have in their head. So this is a beautiful opportunity for Biden, just as it was in 2020, to dispel all of those myths in the voters' minds that he's too old for this.
We have a clip of Trump calling into one of the networks and talking about it. And it's ironic that he says that Biden can't string a sentence together because Trump is completely incoherent in this clip. Let's take a look.
Then you have a hostile network like Fox. Like when I did the interview with Brett, I thought it was fine. I thought it was okay, but there was nothing friendly about it. It was nasty. And I thought I did a good job. I've been given credit for doing a good job, but I've also, people said, why would you do it? Because it was really, everything was like an unfriendly. It was always, everything was unfriendly. No smiling, no let's have fun, let's make America great again. Everything was like a hit. So, you have a hostile network and you have people that are obviously their candidates are against you, and they therefore are being hostile. And if you're leading by 30, 40, or 50 points, what's the purpose of really doing it?
If Donald Trump thinks that Fox is a hostile network, then how is he going to cope with a hostile nation like Russia or North Korea?
This is the point.
In a moment of crisis for the nation.
He's such a baby.
Yeah.
He's such a crybaby and a whiner that he can't, that Fox is too mean to him. Fox is unfair. Bret Baier, he was complaining that Bret Baier didn't smile and team up with him to get his message out. It was the only sit down one-on-one interview that Trump has done with a real journalist since he left the presidency. Yeah. He's done only one, and it was the Bret Baier sit down interview. And he was absolutely wretched. He was horrible. And that's what he's complaining about there, is that he wasn't allowed to ramble. He got pinned down. He had to give specific answers and he couldn't do it. He was terrible. So then he was coming on saying, well, I won't do a Fox debate because they're unfair to me. And I won't do one if Bret Baier is the moderator. But now what is he saying today? He wants to do a Fox debate with Bret Baier as the moderator. So, no matter what you do with this guy, he's going to whine and cry.
Now, I have a slightly different position on all of this, and I haven't told you about this in advance, but hopefully you'll find it interesting. I don't know if you know, but I actually, in the UK, I worked as a special advisor to some political leaders, and I did debate prep with them for TV debates, and I did it for years and years, and I really got into it. So, and I would play the moderator, or I would, this is what you do. I mean, all politicians do debate prep with somebody. Famously, who was it that did Donald Trump's one last time around? Chris Christie. Right. Yeah. So that was a job that I had, and I really enjoyed it. But you get an insight as to how these things kind of work. My view this time, though, on Joe Biden kind of reaching out and being like, come on then, come and debate. If I was advising, I'd be like, no, do not offer to debate Donald Trump. It should absolutely not happen. And the reason being is that it legitimizes Donald Trump's candidacy when he is a wannabe dictator and former dictator, when he is a criminal defendant, when he is a sexual abuser or rapist, to define it properly. You do not legitimize Donald Trump at this stage in the campaign by saying, let's go on TV and pretend it's a normal election. It is not a normal election when one candidate is a raving autocrat. Like, you do not legitimize it by trying to put him in the environment, i.e. a TV studio with lights and music and theme titles and all that stuff. It legitimizes him. He is a loose cannon, dangerous wannabe dictator who is friends with Russia and doesn't care for the US security services, who stole classified documents. You do not debate this guy. And Joe Biden should give all of those reasons for refusing to debate him. And sure, the right will go, well, it's because Joe Biden can't string a sentence together. No, it's national security. We should not let Donald Trump anywhere near the White House, and stopping him is not legitimizing him.
Well, the problem is, I understand everything you're saying, and I agree that the media should not treat him like a normal candidate. The problem is that the voters who are going to decide this election do not agree with that position that you have. So the biggest concern that they have is Joe Biden's cognitive ability and his age and his ability to handle himself. And that shows up. I don't talk a lot about polls. I'm not a believer in polls. I think most polls are wrong. But when polls consistently over 2 years show the same thing, and they show that Joe Biden has to do something about that. And so the best way for him to convince those voters is to debate Trump and do well. So if this was a situation where Biden's approval rating was at 55% and he was leading Trump by 7 or 8 points in the polls, and he was younger, I would agree with all of that. In other words, if this was 2012 Barack Obama running against Donald Trump, I would agree with all of that. The problem is that Joe Biden doesn't have that luxury because he's an 81-year-old candidate with an approval rating that has never cracked mid-40s and is hovering around 40 now. And he's got to prove himself to the American people that he can do 4 more. And the best way for him to do that is a debate. So I agree with some of what you're saying, but I just think Joe Biden doesn't have a choice. And I think the format that he's agreed to is going to favor him in every way.
But again, it goes back to lowest common denominator, which is a boxing match or a wrestling match.
That's right.
With all of the, and in the blue corner, Donald Trump, and and this is the problem, isn't it? That America loves.
That's what we are.
That's what we are. And
Yeah.
and ultimately, what we've effectively got is Adolf Hitler and Joe Biden, and it's like, yeah, but the TV debate's going to be great. It's like, this guy wants to build internment camps, right? This guy wants to deport 12 million people. This guy is going to gut the EPA and reverse all the climate change promises.
But
it's like, you cannot debate someone who is that dangerous.
But the good part about this is no one has ever asked him those things, and no one has ever forced him to answer January 6th questions or pinned him down on some of his
policy. Do you think the networks
proposals.
will? I'm not convinced.
And if they do that and force Trump to answer those hard questions for the first time, this will be a huge success for Biden. So yes, you're right. A lot of pressure is on these moderators to ask the right questions and to pin him down on some of these crazy policy proposals and not just ask these stupid horse race questions. You're right about that.
I don't trust the networks. I don't see much of what they do as journalism. It's very much infotainment, right? Those networks. And so what they're going to do is try and get viewers. That's all they care about. They don't care about saving democracy. They don't care about keeping a despot out of the Oval Office. They just care about ratings. So they're going to not ask the questions that you want them to ask. They're going to give Donald Trump what he needs to be P.T. Barnum and put on a show. And that's why it's just history repeating itself. We are absolutely walking into the same story that we did in 2020 and 2016. And I just don't understand how the goalposts haven't been moved, considering Donald Trump has admitted that he wants to be a dictator and Project 2025 is listing everything he's going to do. It's like, how bad does it have to get before the networks are like, something, we might not have a country to have a TV channel on. I mean, he even threatened he would shut down networks, take their licenses away if they weren't favorable to him.
Said that about MSNBC. That's right. Yeah.
Tell me what Brian Stelter said about these debates, because didn't he post something about what was originally going to be posed as a debate format?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. So, right. This is absolutely true. This is basically a statement for why he wouldn't do the commission debates, because it's not a show. It's not an entertainment. This is the problem with the live audience. They disrupt. They take up time. The moderators can tell them all they want. Hey, I don't want any cheering. I don't want any interruption. The audience ignores that. They don't follow those rules. They don't. Once that debate starts, there's not much a moderator can do to stop them. So this is exactly what Biden didn't want. And that's why I say this format is a huge win for Biden, to not have the live audience there with plants disrupting and heckling, and to make this more of a serious academic exercise. That favors Biden 100%, because that Trump feeds off that. Trump feeds off a live crowd. He feeds off booing and jeering and hissing. That's what Trump likes. Trump does not like a quiet studio situation. So yeah, this is exactly. I think that in the next few days, what we're going to see from Team Trump is a lot of backpedaling on this, and a lot of, hey, you know what, this really isn't fair, and a lot of whining and complaining. I think that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, we're also going to see a criminal defendant walk out of a courtroom, cross the road into a TV studio, and suddenly be a star. And that's, effectively what we're doing here by, legitimizing him, by giving him a platform. And I just wish Biden would assert his authority in that way and make it clear that you don't, in the same way that you don't negotiate with terrorists, you don't debate with lunatics and people who are, who disrespect the Constitution and looking to, reshape the U.S. government in his image. It's terrifying.
I think he had that luxury with RFK. And he ignored RFK, and he was able to do that.
Yeah,
he just unfortunately just doesn't have that luxury with the American voter.
Okay. Okay. I want to get into the trial because obviously Michael Cohen gave evidence, and this was pretty full on. We thought Stormy Daniels was on top of her game. Michael Cohen the same. We have to take a quick break. Then we're going to come back and do that next here on Uncovered. Do you remember cereal being one of the best parts of being a kid? Well, as I got older, I had to watch for sugar and empty carbs. Well, Magic Spoon has the amazing flavors you love, but high protein and less sugar. You can get the variety pack, 4 flavors, cocoa, fruity, frosted, and peanut butter. This pack has no grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. And only 140 calories per serving. It's high protein, has no grams of sugar, keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, and soy-free. Go to magicspoon.com/uncovered to grab a variety pack and try it today. And be sure to use the promo code UNCOVERED at checkout to save $5 off your order. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So, if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, start your day off right with a delicious bowl of high-protein cereal at magicspoon.com/uncovered and use code UNCOVERED to save $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode. Have you heard about senolytics yet? It's a class of ingredients discovered less than 10 years ago, and they're being called the biggest discovery of our time for promoting healthy aging and enhancing your physical prime. Your life goals in your career and beyond require productivity. But let's be honest, the aging process is not our friend when it comes to endless energy and productivity, and that's why I use Qualia Senolytic. If someone would have told me that there was science-backed ingredients that could help me feel 15 years younger in a matter of months, I wouldn't have believed it. Then I tried Qualia Senolytic. As we age, everyone accumulates senescent cells in their body. Senescent cells cause symptoms of aging, such as aches and discomfort, slow workout recovery, sluggish mental and physical energy associated with that middle-age feeling. Also known as zombie cells, they are old and worn out and not serving a useful function for our health anymore, but they're taking up space and nutrients from our healthy cells. Much like pruning the yellowing and dead leaves off a plant, qualia senolytic removes those worn-out senescent cells to allow for the rest of them to thrive in the body. Resist aging at the cellular level. Try Qualia Senolytic. Go to neurohacker.com/uncovered for up to $100 off and use code UNCOVERED at checkout for an additional 15% off. That's neurohacker.com/uncovered for an extra 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Neurohacker, for sponsoring today's episode. Welcome back, and you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Okay, Ron, so let's go to the courts. You're a lawyer. What the hell's going on? It's Michael Cohen, and obviously there's no sitting today. Michael Cohen gave evidence yesterday. Is he done now? Is this it? Are they going to call any more witnesses?
That's kind of the big news, is that this wasn't announced in open court. It was said at a sidebar, so nobody heard it. But the transcript is released of these sidebar conferences at the bench after the fact. And what we found out late yesterday afternoon was, in a surprise move, the state announced that that's it. When Michael Cohen is done testifying, which he should be done tomorrow, they're not calling any other witnesses. They're resting their case. So what you're going to have is a judgment of acquittal argument, a legal argument by Trump's lawyers to throw out the case, to say that they didn't prove the case. Most likely that's going to be denied by Judge Mershon. And then Trump's going to have the opportunity to put on their case. So they're going to be able to call witnesses. Trump's going to be able to testify. So they seem to indicate that they have some witnesses that they're going to call. I don't know who they are. I think it's crazy that Trump would testify, but he claimed before the trial started he was going to testify, but we all know he's not going to. The only question at this point is, what is he going to come up with as an excuse? But I followed the Cohen testimony very closely. Obviously, I don't think the Cohen testimony was like make or break, like a lot of the media says. I think it was important, but not make or break. It was very, very interesting to see how the prosecution did the direct examination, which we can talk about, and then the contrast that with how Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer, is doing the cross, which, a good trial lawyer, somebody who's done a lot of trials like I have, can figure out fairly early into the cross exactly what the defense is, even if some of it is being hidden from everyone. And I could clearly see from Blanche's questioning exactly what the defense is going to be in this trial. Yeah.
You want to tell us, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll say,
I'm very interested.
Let's break it into two halves. Let's take the direct of Michael Cohen, okay, yeah, from the prosecution. The prosecution understood that Michael Cohen is a problem, and Michael Cohen is a problem because of what I criticize Michael Cohen for. I'm a Cohen critic. I'm not a Michael Cohen apologist by any means. And I know there are people who love Michael Cohen. I will say I appreciate his contrition and what he's doing and cooperating. But at the same time, I have a lot of problems with what he's done and what he says. And a big problem is, him continuing to talk about the case and what has come out in this trial during cross-examination, which we didn't know, is how often the prosecutors have begged Michael Cohen to stop doing this behind the scenes. Repeatedly, they have asked him, stop going on TikTok, stop wearing Trump and behind bars t-shirts, stop making money, stop writing books. He's made over $4 million on his 2 books about Trump. Over $4 million. People don't know this. Michael Cohen has made a lot of money off of this situation. And of course, the defense is able to just seize upon that and bring all of that out. So what the prosecution has done is step by step, every single thing that Cohen testifies to, they'll throw up a document or an email or a text message to show, like, you don't have to take Cohen's word for anything. Everything he's testifying to is backed up by a document. And so they painstakingly did that with his direct. So basically every single step of the way, they have a document to sort of back up what Cohen is saying, because they know his credibility is shot.
And there was also audio recordings as well.
That's right. He secretly recorded Trump. So all of that, I thought the direct was masterful. I thought Cohen was excellent on his direct examination, and I thought that went very well. Now, as far as the cross-examination goes, contrast that. Todd Blanche has not used a single exhibit, not one piece of paper to cross-examine him. He's only cross-examining him with the bias, but you can clearly see the defense being fleshed out, and there's two parts to it. Part number one is what I'll call the chief of staff part of the defense, which is they're setting this up as Cohen is the jilted lover, that Cohen adored Donald Trump, was obsessed when he worked for him, was obsessed with Donald Trump, loved Donald Trump, worshiped Trump. He was part of the Trump cult, and Cohen admitted all of that in cross-examination.
Yeah, he said he would do anything for him.
Take a bullet. He said he would take a bullet for him. So they established that Cohen adored Trump, loved Trump. Then Cohen expected that he would either be chief of staff, White House counsel, attorney general. He truly believed, he was so deep in this cult that he truly believed that Trump was going to put him in a cabinet level position, which is, any objective observer could look at this and go, Cohen had no qualifications for any of those roles. That was never going to happen.
Not did any of Trump's other cabinet members. So I mean that argument's not so strong.
Okay, well, Jeff Sessions was his attorney general.
Yeah.
Jeff Sessions was astronomically more qualified than Michael Cohen to be attorney general.
He also recused himself, but
his White House counsel were astronomically more qualified and competent than Michael Cohen. So I hear what you're saying, but Michael Cohen would not even be remotely considered to be confirmed by the Senate, by anybody. So this is a pipe dream that he had, but he believed it. And when he didn't get that position, when he didn't get any position in the government, nothing, he was offered like assistant deputy White House counsel, some low mid-level position. He was devastated and he was upset. And then they brought out how he missed Trump and how he missed all the people with the campaign, and how he was on the outside. He was like a kid with his nose pressed against the glass at Christmas time outside
or a jilted
store.
Lover. Yeah.
Right. And so when he was rejected by Trump, that he plotted his revenge, that he was going to get him back. And then they marry that up with all this financial stuff, that at number one, he was mad and upset and angry at Trump. He was the jilted lover. And then number two, not only is he getting Trump back, he's making millions of dollars off Trump. And they pointed out that he's done over 200 episodes of his podcast, Mea Culpa, and every single one of those 200 was about Donald Trump.
But the timeline for this argument, and it's very interesting to hear you kind of present where you think it's going to go.
Yeah.
But the timeline for this argument is completely wrong. We're talking about the ledger at the Trump organization. We're talking about $130,000 that was paid. There's an audio recording where they talk about our friend David Pecker, of course, of the National Enquirer. And, so from that perspective, it's a done deal. He didn't start his podcast until after he'd left Donald Trump's employment. So they can do all that, but I just think from the jury's perspective, and Karen was saying on Legal AF the other day that juries they have great instinct and they have a great sense of understanding right from wrong because they're not emotionally involved. And to me, there is so much evidence against Donald Trump and Michael Cohen with regard to, the clarity about the fact that Michael Cohen said in his testimony, when he was asked, was this money to buy the silence of Stormy Daniels because of the election, he basically said yes. That's what this is going to come down to.
To me, the main weakness of the defense is one point, which I'm sure the prosecutor will hammer over and over again. And that point is this: why would Michael Cohen put up pay Stormy Daniels $130,000 of his own money. Why would he do that? If it wasn't for Trump, if it wasn't to protect Trump, if it wasn't directed at Trump. And then the other part of that is how insistent he was on being reimbursed. If he was just doing this
didn't have
on
the
his
money,
own,
though, did he? He had to remortgage his property.
he had no
get
money.
that money. Yeah,
he had to take out a second mortgage on his house and hide it from his wife.
right.
So because he thought Trump was going to reimburse him right away. And then you have the documentary evidence from Weisselberg, which is his own handwriting.
Yes.
On the document saying that this was reimbursement for the Stormy Daniels payoff.
Yeah.
Now, the defense is going to have to say that not only did Cohen do that on his own without any knowledge of Trump, him doing that, but also Trump's own CFO reimbursed Cohen for this without Trump knowing. That's what they have to get this jury to believe. And that's why I think Trump will end up getting convicted.
I agree with that final statement. Let's talk about Donald Trump trying to rally support from the MAGA Republicans in Congress. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene's not very happy about this. We'll show a clip of her in just a second. But first, we had this moment where the Speaker of the House traveled from Washington, D.C. to New York, to Manhattan to be there in the trial, along with a bunch of others, Tommy Tuberville and a few other. They were like heavies. It was like, send in the heavies, the henchmen. I mean, not Mike Johnson because he's a small thing. But the rest of them, they were standing there. They were all wearing the cult uniform. They looked like Mormons. They were all wearing the red tie and the shirt and the same color suit, like the Donald Trump uniform.
Right.
And they effectively were trying to act like a kind of a heavy team of, what's the word? They were just being aggressive. The way they were standing, and J.D. Vance was there, and he's a big tall thing, looking very aggressive. It was not exactly how you would want to play this if you were Donald Trump and trying to separate this from politics and say this was all about, something separate from politics. But he's just blown that argument out the window.
Yeah, I think that this is a dumb thing. I think Trump's lawyers are not happy about this, but they have to just accept that that's who they're representing.
Because no one's coming to support him. There's no one in the streets.
And this doesn't help him. This doesn't help his case. He's trying to help himself politically. The problem is what these people are doing is they're basically violating the gag order from Trump. And it looks pathetic when people like Tommy Tuberville or Vance, who know nothing about this case, they know none of the details, they know none of the evidence, are trying to talk about the merits of the case. And I think that people really see through that. How do you really know what this case is about? But the person who was especially pathetic is Mike Johnson, who is worse than all of them. And Mike Johnson, by the way, is getting blasted by both sides.
Yes.
You have people on the right hammering him for what he did up there, and people on the left doing it too. So he's getting it from both sides, because here's what Mike Johnson did. He shows up at the trial. He doesn't even go inside. The other ones at least they went into the courtroom for like an hour, watched it, and then left. At least they pretended.
They were on their phone. I think J.D. Vance was on his phone the whole time, according to witnesses. Tommy Tuberville was watching and paying close attention. But the issue with Mike Johnson is that he is a man of God. He is a very religious person. He is somebody who, he said, you want to know what I think? Just take a look at the Bible. And yet here he is protecting his supreme leader in a criminal trial because the guy tried to pay off a porn star to help his election. I mean, none of this adds up, and it just proves the power of Donald Trump over people like Mike Johnson.
But you know what the people on the right thought about what he did was most pathetic, was they thought he was insincere. And he wasn't. He was just up there. He read these prepared remarks that I think Donald Trump wrote for him, because he appeared to be having trouble reading handwriting. He was struggling with reading what he was given, his script. So he had no emotion, no passion, whereas the other people are out there, ranting and raving for the cameras. Mike is just standing there trying to read this script, and he's never been inside the courtroom one time. He knows nothing about the case. So he came off looking foolish, looking stupid. You're criticizing the trial, and you don't even know what the trial is about. You don't know anything. At least the other people went inside the courtroom for an hour before they left. He didn't even bother to do that.
And by reading this script that Donald Trump had written for him, is that violating Donald Trump's gag order? Is Donald Trump trying to circumnavigate the gag order, which obviously he takes very personally, doesn't quite understand, and doesn't understand that it's there to protect the jury and the witnesses and everybody else? He sees it, as a personal thing against him because he doesn't have an intellect. He's not able to regulate his speech, so, better say less than anything. And now he's getting his surrogates, and he's admitted this, and they're talking about it on Fox. What a great idea it is. In fact, they were laughing about it on these right-wing channels, saying, isn't it clever? He managed to get around the gag order by getting his surrogates to say what it is that he once said. I mean, how is Judge Juan Merchan going to deal with this issue?
The problem is that Judge Merchan's order exactly addresses that. And it says in there, you cannot direct any third party to violate the gag order on your behalf. That's in writing in the order. Clearly he's doing that. And what really gave the game away on this was Monday with Jean Pirro, the Fox host,
yes,
who attended the trial. She was like the only one who stayed all day. At least she stayed one whole day. And then Trump grabbed her at the end and said, whispered in her ear, I need to talk to you. They went outside. He speaks to her. And then he immediately posts on True Social, everyone needs to watch Jean Pirro on Hannity tonight. Then an hour before the show, he reminds people, watch Jean Pirro on Hannity. So he didn't say, watch Fox tonight. He didn't say watch Hannity tonight. He said specifically, watch Jean Pirro on Hannity. What did she do? She went on Hannity and attacked Stormy Daniels, Cohen, and the judge's daughter. The three things that Trump has been sanctioned for doing. She didn't talk about anything else, only violations of the gag order. So it's totally obvious that that's what Trump is doing. What I believe is if this trial was going to go on for another 2 or 3 weeks, I believe Merchan would dig into this and possibly do something about it. But I think with the prosecution saying that they're going to rest their case tomorrow, and with the defense probably not having very many witnesses, if any, I think Merchan will probably just let this go and move on.
That's how I felt. And still, he's going to go and debate Joe Biden.
Well, I could be wrong, but I just think with this trial being over like Monday or Tuesday, possibly, I think he's not going to want to dig into all that.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's take a look at Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, trying to read Donald Trump's handwriting.
What they're accusing President Trump of is falsification of business records. But I think everybody knows he is not the bookkeeper for his company. President Trump is innocent of these charges. And again, anyone with common sense can understand what is happening here. In the midst of all this nonsense and corruption, they have placed a ridiculous...
Yeah, I mean, that, and so it went on.
You can see how he's just reading a script that's been given to him.
Maybe he qualified in his mind that by not going into the courtroom, then God wouldn't have a problem with him doing this, and that by staying outside, then that is like a ring of steel of divine safety. Yeah. Just a thought.
He still flew up there at taxpayer expense. So.
That's right, yes. And this was a point that the some of the networks were making, that, they all had to get themselves there. I do actually have a clip of Miss Pirro. Let's take a look at her violating Donald Trump's gag order.
With reaction, she is the co-host of the hit show, The Five, and a friend of this program, Judge Jeanine Pirro. Judge, Alan Dershowitz said something. Trump's trial will go down in the history books as a stupendous legal catastrophe. I want to ask you about that, and I want to ask you this question. Is it normal for the prosecution to have mock trials or mock testimony with their witnesses in a case?
What do you mean mock trials? Does the prosecution prep their witness? Absolutely. And that's what happened with Stormy Daniels. And I'll tell you how I know. She was excellent on direct examination. She didn't skip a beat. She couldn't stop talking. Cross-examination, she was a totally different person, totally different witness. So she was prepped for the prosecution, not for the defense. And I got to tell you, I was in there in the overflow room when she testified. This woman talks to dead people. She thinks she's, in some kind of seance and tarot cards, and she thinks she lived in a haunted house. I mean, there's a screw loose in there somewhere. But
You see, there's an example of how the right-wing media present a completely different narrative to what people living in reality expect. And even, the way they criticized her testimony in that caption on the screen there, it's a parallel universe. And this is my concern, is that for people that live in that world, they're seeing a kangaroo court, they're seeing a porn star who's not to be trusted because she works in the sex industry. I mean, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, and so the trial's not televised, so they can't see anything for themselves.
Yeah.
So the only information they're getting is from Fox.
Yeah, they're relying on Hannity as a messenger.
Hannity, Jonathan Turley, Mark Levin. And so what happens is they have this idea that the trial has just been a disaster and that Trump is winning, just like with the 2020 election. They're being told he's winning in a landslide. He's going to win big, right? And then when it doesn't happen, it's rigged. You see, how could he possibly be found guilty? It must be rigged. So this is what they do. This is the propaganda machine.
And let's just talk a little bit about what went on in the courtroom, because there was witnesses saying that they were watching Trump editing and making notations to quotes that his Republican allies actually made to the press, actually, like they were seen writing these things down. I don't have a clip for that. I thought I did, but maybe I did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there is one somewhere. Oh, yeah, no, here it is. Let's take a look. Sorry, it's very small here. I'm working in miniature. Here it comes.
You wearing the red tie? Yeah, Vivek, I'm wearing the red tie. You got the note about the judge's daughter? I got it, Doug. Byron, you got it? I mean, it is not, they're not even trying to hide what they're doing here.
In court yesterday, actually, I was sitting close enough that I could actually look over Trump's shoulder and see what he was reading. At one point, he was actually reading the quotes that these individuals were, and going through and making notations with a pen on the paper.
Before or after?
While testimony was going on, while Michael Cohen was testifying against him, he was actually going through and annotating and editing the quotes that these people were going to say.
I mean, in addition...
And extending the trajectory of the storm at the same time.
Yeah, that's a gag order violation. And we've talked about he does this with newspaper articles all the time on Truth Social.
Yeah.
Where he has his person print out articles and then he crosses out the parts he doesn't like. And then he has his employee that works for him take out those parts of the articles that he doesn't like, and then he puts them up on Truth Social, all redacted. So that's what Trump does. So he's doing the same thing with the talking points. When they go out and violate the gag order form, sometimes he wants them to do it. And that's why what you're hearing from these people is you're hearing Trump's language, Trump's syntax. When they speak, you're hearing Trump's words. It's painfully obvious.
But this is why I would be very upset if the judge did not do something about this gag order violation. Letting it go because the case is coming to an end is one thing, but allowing him to get away with this because it's so blatant.
Here's the problem. He's going to deny it, of course. The only way he would have to conduct a hearing where he would have to bring in members of Congress, Fox hosts, put them on the stand and ask them under oath about their communications with Trump. That's a circus. I don't think Mershon wants anything to do with that. You're running into your members of Congress will have separation of powers issues, all of this kind of stuff. Jean Pirro might even claim attorney-client privilege because she's a lawyer. It's a really opening up a big can of worms. You'd have to basically catch Trump confessing to doing this. I think for Mershon to go forward. And look, it's going to take the DA to do it, to make the motion. So they're the ones who are going to have to initiate it. And I tend to think what they want to do is present a clean, quick case to the jury. And they're ready to do that now. And I don't think they want to have that kind of a sideshow.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, as we know, is trying to heave the speaker out of his chair. She's no fan, and she was certainly no fan of him going up to defend Donald Trump. Let's take a look.
This made me sick to my stomach this morning, ma'am.
Oh, I can't believe I just had to listen to it again, Steve. It's repulsive. And the fact that he's like, I came up there on my own. Yeah, who paid for your airplane, Mike Johnson. And here's the whole thing about it. He's up there talking, complaining about the weaponized government against President Trump, against our presidential candidate for president. And Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. Don't run up to New York and sit there and hug President Trump as tightly as you can and feign like, oh, all of this outrage over Alvin Bragg. That's a state case. This is a federal case. Jack Smith is federal. We are federal. Mike Johnson is Speaker of the House, which is federal. That's something that we can do something about. The Department of Justice that is weaponized against President Trump.
The noise. The noise. I mean, this is Lord of the Flies now, isn't it? You know, they're turning on each other.
Well, there's a backstory here, you know, but everything she said there is true, which is great. I mean, it's like, that was all the replies to my post was like, wow, it's the first time I've ever agreed with Green. And she's dropping truth bombs right there.
You want to get yourself a gold throne, by the way, a gold throne with the stars and stripes behind you. Right.
She got that chair like a month ago. It looks
Beautiful.
Like a queen on
it's
her
like
throne.
The Big
now.
Brother house.
Yeah, I noticed when she got that chair. Some people commented on it. But look, the backstory is this. She brought the motion to vacate, last week? Seems like a month ago, but it was just last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago. She brings the motion to vacate. What happens? Trump backs Johnson. If Trump did not back Johnson on that, Johnson would be out. You know, Johnson would be screwed. But Trump went against Green and, in fact, put out a statement saying, I love Marjorie, but she's wrong about this. Johnson's a good guy. We're sticking with him, right? So then what happens? A couple days after the motion to vacate is the big event at Mar-a-Lago where all the prospective running mate people are there, and Green went to that. Green was there. And Trump calls everyone up on stage, and we saw the picture. He had like 15 people up there on stage. One of the people up on stage was Mike Johnson, who was called up there. Who was not called up there? Marjorie Taylor Greene was not called up there. She had to stay out in the audience with everybody else.
Yeah, she was furious.
She was furious about that. So the first thing that happens is Trump backs Mike Johnson against her on the motion to vacate. Next, couple days later, he calls Johnson up on stage, doesn't call Greene. Then this happens where Greene is not up there at the trial. And I believe that because Trump does not want her there because he's such a polarizing figure. But who goes up there is Mike Johnson. And that was just like the final straw for Greene, and she just snapped.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting that Steve Bannon also claimed not to be happy about it either, right?
Well, he doesn't like Mike Johnson. Yeah, so yeah,
but
Steve Bannon, he looks for any reason to criticize Johnson.
Yeah. I mean, because sometimes, we get so caught up discussing the MAGA Republicans and the infighting and the propaganda and the lies and this kind of death spiral that we forget to remind people that the Democrats, in comparison, are so unified and are, they are, despite having a range of views, because remember, Democratic views are very wide-ranging compared to far-right and MAGA Republican views, right? You can count the views of the Republicans on one hand, but Democrats represent a range of thoughts and of thinking and belief systems, and yet they are so unified and just sitting tight under the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, and it's really nice to see. I think that maybe it's a similar strategy to Joe Biden, which is like sit tight and let the lunatics, beat each other up and see who's left standing.
Well, it's such a diverse party where you have people from socialists and even anarchists all the way to ex-Republicans like myself and people like Rick Wilson.
I might hold the anarchist thing against you a little there, but I think people who, care. The social democracy ultimately is something that, everybody can benefit from. And I think that's what, it's not really a phrase that people use here, but that's what we have in the UK and a lot in Europe. And I think that people are very much subscribed to the concept of a social democracy.
Well, they do, but there are also anarchists in the
There's
Democratic
like 3 anarchists, and 2 of them are Trump supporters
all right.
wearing other
Maybe
clothes.
I hear from them a more. But look, the Democratic Party is very diverse, very broad, with a broad spectrum of views. And you're right. I think the threat of Donald Trump has sobered up and caused many Democrats to put aside their differences on small things and to come together to beat back this threat and defeat it. And I've often said, like, once the threat of Trump is gone, then we're probably going to have a lot of fights then, more than now. But I will say the first crack in that is because of the Israel situation. Because look, how many political parties in the world, I was thinking about this the other day, how many political parties in the world have Jews and Muslims together in the same political party, working together? I can't think of any place, hardly anywhere in the world where that's the case. And so this has created a divide, I think, for the first time that everyone's concerned about. The question is, are they going to take that into the voting booth? Are they, is this division going to hurt Joe Biden in some way, fracture the Democratic coalition? I hope not. But this is the first time we've seen any issue come up that's created a fissure,
I would just say, as a European, that most countries have Jews and Muslims working together. They just recognize the separation of church and state, and therefore they don't bring their religion into work. And so it's actually very normal for Jews and Muslims to be running political parties. That's very normal in most countries.
Really?
But,
that surprises me. Together in the same party?
Yeah, of course. It's completely normal. But because, people are not extremist like they are here in the US. And this idea of most Jews are moderate, most Muslims are moderate. There isn't this kind of extremism that we see in the US between the right now being the far right. It doesn't exist. And the hatred and the lies and talking about people like they're the enemy. Most civilized countries, people's politics might differ, but they would never refer to each other as enemies and spew all these lies and propaganda that we see and hear from Trump and, Fox and Hannity. It's so dangerous for democracy. And that is something that I only feel it because obviously I've come 5,000 miles to experience this. And it's normal to you. But to me, it's so abnormal that people just don't seem to be able to get on. And just to Israel for a second, I think it's important that we remind people that if people are protesting Joe Biden and saying, well, because of your stance on Israel, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, they're going to get even more of that stance because Donald Trump is far closer to Benjamin Netanyahu, both physically and politically.
I don't sense the ability for a lot of people to get that rationalization. I mean, that's very logical and makes a tremendous amount of sense, but I don't see a lot of logic coming into play and dispassionate reasoning on this issue with some people. Now, but I also tend to think at the same time that a lot of these people are saying, like, I'm not voting for Joe Biden because of this, really weren't going to vote for Joe Biden anyway. They either don't vote or they vote third party traditionally. I think the number of people who are solid Joe Biden voters who are not going to vote for him is going to be very, very small.
Yeah, I just think it's important that we remind people that protest vote is only going to get more. Donald Trump wants to see every Arab and Muslim eradicated from the planet. I mean, he brought a Muslim ban in his first week of presidency and says he's going to do it again. I mean, really? You're going to vote for that guy because you don't like Joe Biden's stance on Israel?
He would pave Gaza. Jared Kushner would be building condos there.
That's right.
And he would deport every one of those college students protesting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to look to some of the crazy stuff that Trump was saying at his rallies when he started talking about Hannibal Lecter like he was a real person. I'll do that in just a sec. Let's take a quick break. Back in just a moment. Nobody likes using a cheap razor. That's why you've got to meet Henson Shaving. They're a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the ISS and Mars rover, and now they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. If you're like 88% of men who experience irritation from shaving, you might be expecting the worst from each shave, yet Henson users have seen dramatic improvements. Henson Shaving's innovation comes from an interesting analogy. Think of razor blades as diving boards. The longer the board, the more it wobbles. The micro wobbles are what lead to more nicks and cuts. Henson solves this by minimizing blade extension, addressing the root cause of bad shaves. And it gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edge blades to give you that old-school shave with the benefits of new-school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 a year to replace the blades. It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/uncovered to pick the razor for you and use code UNCOVERED and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/uncovered and use code UNCOVERED. And again, the link is in the description below. Okay, Trump's rally, it's very interesting how his cognitive ability, it changes so much. And it's clearly dementia, and those people who are experts have explained the difference between Joe Biden being mature and forgetting things, and Donald Trump being demented and therefore, being all over the place. You mentioned syntax, but there's, sunlighting and sundowning, and everything else. So let's just look to this rally where he talks about Hannibal Lecter as if he's a real person, because I never got my head around the context of this. Can you tell us why he started talking about a fictional character like he was a real person?
I've heard him tell this story a bunch of times. It changes a little bit each time. Sometimes he forgets the context or why he's brought it up. I'm not exactly sure what he's referring to when he brings Hannibal Lecter into this. But I do believe he almost thinks, I think Asen and I talk about this all the time. We kick this back and forth. Does he think that the actor Anthony Hopkins's name is Hannibal Lecter? And he also says the late, great Hannibal Lecter. Like, does he think Anthony Hopkins, the actor, is dead? So like I tend to think he's talking about the actor Anthony Hopkins, because why would he say Hannibal Lecter was great? What was Hannibal Lecter great at?
It's so weird.
And why would you use that as a reference?
But it's no different to Al Capone when he talks about the late, great Al Capone and how people... Right. And so maybe he just... Because, look, a lot of the psychological analysis says that he has a thing for dictators and murderers and despots. Like, that's who he's into, right? So, it's no coincidence that he delivers his speeches as Hitler delivered his. He does have an interest in this stuff, and it is weird. And I can imagine that Hannibal Lecter as a character, of course, the films were wonderful, but they were just films. And I'll play the clip in just a second, but he references, I'm having a friend for dinner, which is, a play on the cannibalism. So was it the cannibalism that he likes? I wouldn't put it past him. Let's take a look.
Silence of the Lambs. Has anyone ever seen a Silence of the Lambs? The late, great Hannibal Lecter is a wonderful man. He oftentimes would have a friend for dinner. Remember the last scene? Excuse me, I'm about to have a friend for dinner as this poor doctor walked by. I'm about to have a friend for dinner, but Hannibal Lecter, congratulations, the late, great Hannibal Lecter. We have people that are being released into our country that we don't want in our country.
Yeah.
That's what it was, Ron. He was thinking of a criminal in a cage with a mask, and like, because he talks about people who are mentally ill being set free into the US at the southern border. So he thought Hannibal Lecter, who's an educated white man, somehow is the same as these criminals, rapists, and drug dealers.
Yeah, it's part of his immigration stuff that that all these countries are emptying out all their insane asylums, and all those people are coming in. So he's basically saying like millions of Hannibal Lecters are coming into the United States.
And Joe Biden wants to debate this guy. Just saying.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to say where he's going with these stories, because he'll start and then he'll stop and then he'll forget where he's going with it. But you know, you could ask Trump who the actress who played the lead part in Silence of the Lambs, Jodie Foster. He couldn't name her, or he probably wouldn't even remember that character. But the character that stands out in his mind is Hannibal Lecter. Yeah.
Let's take a look at a clip of what was really going on the opposite side of that camera, and that was the crowds leaving. Now, this has become a bit of a theme, hasn't it? Because he tends to get up there and he goes on, and he leaves the autocue, and then he goes back to the autocue, and he needs it. It fuels his ego and his malignant narcissism, but it does mean that he's going off on tangents. He doesn't know about holding his audience anymore. And also, you know, these speeches years ago, they were, okay, fine, they were entertaining because we hadn't heard this stuff before. But so much of it now is repetition. And people are kind of done with that.
Well, and we've talked about this before, where he will use, he has been latching on to other events. Like he's holding his rallies close by where something else is going on.
Right.
And so like we saw that at the Iowa State Fair, where you had a lot of people who were trying to go to the fair, but he bottled them up, and he was trying to argue that all those people were there for him when they were really there for the fair. He does this with football games. He will go somewhere where there's going to be a crowd for something else, and he will claim that crowd as his own. And this is what he did here in Jersey. There was other events going on. This was at the beach. There were other things happening. And so when he started his speech, a lot of those people walked over there because they're curious. I would too if I was there. They want to see the spectacle. What the heck's going on? You know, let's look at some of these other people. So at the beginning of his speech, the crowd was quite big. I mean, he had a pretty good sized crowd. It wasn't 80 or 100,000 like he was saying, or the media, right-wing media was saying.
It was about 25,000.
But he had a solid crowd. But then what was documented by a couple of independent and small journalists, not national reporters, I will say, documented and filmed that everybody left within 10 minutes of his speech, and his speech was an hour and a half long, that halfway through his speech, 90% of the crowd was gone. They left. And you can even see in that clip right there, which is towards the beginning of his speech, the people behind him, none of them are listening to him. They're all talking. They're on their phones. And this is typical for Trump rallies. People don't sit there and listen to him. It's an event. It's like the Grateful Dead. I mean, they're just hanging out, a lot of these people. And I'll say something else too. A lot of these people are frequent flyers. They're a big chunk of his rally crowds they travel around. They go to every one. They're the same people over and over again. So, you know, they were claiming New Jersey is in play after this rally. Give me a break. I'll believe them as soon as they do an ad buy. As soon as they put a couple million in the New Jersey TV market, then I'll believe them. But they're not going to do that.
Here's the clip.
One of the best fighters on that is Congressman Ben Hill. He has fought so hard. I don't know, you're around here someplace. There's nobody that fought that. Right over there, you see these things all over the place. They destroy everything. They're horrible. The most expensive dinner.
And I think people like Roger Stone, they were sharing photographs of the crowd from the sky. Well, these pictures turned out to be like an Ariana Grande concert or a Rod Stewart concert. They were like in other places with mountains, and they were trying to share them, saying, "Look how big the crowd was for Trump." And these were just pictures from years ago.
That's what they do. This is their propaganda machine goes into overdrive, and it's all the usual suspects. It's all the right-wing influencers, on Twitter and on social media. And what they do is they pump out these doctored photos and these doctored videos. And look, I'm in the middle on this. I've complained about people on the left being deceptive about his crowd size and suggesting he's not getting anybody to show up, and that's not true. And sometimes people on the left will use photos from like an hour before Trump's speech when half the people aren't even there yet. And I have an issue with that. But the right is 10 times worse as far as the doctoring the photos and exaggerating them. So yes, the reason why Rod Stewart was trending on Twitter 2 hours after Trump's rally is because they were putting out photos of Rod Stewart's concert 20 years ago in Rio as Trump's rally pictures.
I want to change the subject a little bit because just give Trump a rest just for a moment. We don't have long left, but there's a couple of stories that were pretty shocking in the week, and one of them came from Katie Britt. She, of course, gave the Republican response to Joe Biden's State of the Union. We remember it was one of the weirdest things, and then Scarlett Johansson did it again on SNL. She's introduced a bill to create a national registry of pregnant women. They'll then be referred to as crisis pregnancy centers, and the database will not allow any vendor who advocates for abortion rights. I mean, this now is, we're starting to kind of get into the details of what a Donald Trump presidency would look like, right?
When she proposed this, my first thought was Donald Trump and other Republican candidates are going to be furious because they don't want to talk about abortion right now. You know, these are the kind of things you introduce after an election. After you win an election, you roll out things like that. You don't roll out things like this 6 months before an election. Now, she thought this was harmless. This is no big. What's the big deal? You know, women, when they become pregnant, will be put into a national database and will refer them for services. And the people that they want to refer them to are these pregnancy crisis centers where they're going to try and talk you out of terminating your pregnancy.
So it's the Handmaid's Tale, basically.
Yeah, they're going to push you in a certain direction. But the more onerous thing about this is just the fact that they're going to start keeping track of pregnant women in a federal database and keeping track of their pregnancies and whether they've terminated them and whether they've traveled from one state to another to terminate them. And we know where this can lead. And so women recoiled and were extremely irate and furious about this, as they should be. This is just a political huge mistake on the part of Britt. And she probably heard it from a lot of other Republicans that this is an extremely dumb thing.
But the problem is that when you exist in that far-right Christian nationalist environment, these things to you seem perfectly normal. And,
that's right.
And I think this is why we need to stop referring to the right and the left. I would prefer us, not necessarily just in this show, but generally in the kind of the modern vernacular, to refer to the left as normal and just regular and civil and law-abiding, and the far right, because there is no right anymore. You know, those fiscal conservatives have, they've gone to ground, or they've joined the MAGA Republican far right party. And so for people like Katie Britt, thinking with her thoughts on abortion and being a sin and all this stuff, she just thinks it's normal. And this is why I think that Trump and his, well, not so much Trump, but really, the Project 2025 Heritage Foundation people and all these people behind him, including Mike Johnson, are going to get a nasty surprise in November when, they think that people are going to be silent about the reversal of Roe, not to mention everything else. I mean, it is not normal.
And why?
This is the stuff of the Handmaid's Tale, of a dystopian, horrific future.
Why is Katie Britt able to do this? Because she was just elected in 2022 in Alabama by a huge margin.
Yeah.
She's not up for re-election for 4 more years. So she's totally unconcerned. And this is the problem with these far-right politicians, is that she has no concern about this. This is not going to hurt her. It's not going to hurt her in Alabama. Even if she was up for re-election, it wouldn't hurt her in Alabama. But it hurts other Republicans in other places. It hurts Republicans running in New York that are trying to say, oh, no, we're not going to ban abortion at the federal level. Don't worry. And then you got people like Katie Britt out there trying to create databases. So that's why this was a really dumb move politically.
Let's jump to Rudy Giuliani. He's been fired from his radio show. I didn't know he still had a radio show, but apparently so. Doesn't he do it with Anthony Weiner or something? Isn't like I was going to say, is it a double header?
He does it with his girlfriend.
Oh, with his girlfriend. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a little clip of him kind of responding to his firing. Let's just watch it. It's kind of amusing.
All right.
And the Wall Street Journal. The Bidens don't realize who's doing who can really inflict atomic destruction to them. They were going along just fine until Giuliani found the people in Ukraine and explained your admission in front of, what was it, the Atlantic Council or the Council on Foreign Policy. Just want to be free to tell people the truth. You want to stop me, don't you? Yeah.
Somebody stop me. I cut that short because I can't watch too much of him because he's bonkers. But I recognize that somebody who was America's mayor, the fall from grace is quite significant. I mean, it reminded me of that scene at Four Seasons Total Landscaping press conference when they shouted, the election's been called, and he's like, well, who's called it? And they're like, the networks. And he's like, oh, the networks. And it's like, same thing here. You know, he's trying to blame the newspapers for his downfall. I mean, there's no coming back for this guy, is there?
You think about where he was in 2020. I mean, he had a thriving law practice. He had a handful of clients, but high-paying clients.
Yeah.
He was making a lot of money. He was a regular Fox News guest, a regular on Newsmax in shows. He had a lot of income coming in. He had this WABC radio show. He had his podcast. He had all kinds of sponsorship deals. And all of that is gone. He's lost everything. He's lost his law license. He lost all his income from his law practice. He was fired by the firm he was working with. He's banned from Fox and Newsmax. They cannot have him on their shows. He got sued by Shea and Moss, got the massive judgment. He's in bankruptcy court. The only thing this guy had left was this radio show. It was basically his only income, and he was doing it with his girlfriend. And he used that radio show to justify even keeping his condo in Florida from being seized in the bankruptcy, because he said, I need the condo in Florida because that's where I do the radio show out of. That was his excuse. Well, now he lost that. And the reason why he lost that is because Fox settled their case with Dominion. Newsmax has not. That's coming up soon for trial or settlement.
And he won't stop talking about it.
And the problem is he's on WABC, which is owned by a very wealthy guy, John Katzlamides in New York. And Rudy is still spouting the same lies that got Fox and Newsmax sued. So what happened is Dominion went to him, the owner of that station, and said, look, we don't want to do this, but we're about to sue you because you keep letting Rudy say this stuff. So finally, he gave Rudy a warning. He said, you have to stop doing this. Rudy refused, and he was fired. So now Rudy has no job, no income whatsoever.
Just a moment's silence for Rudy Giuliani. I have no sympathy. I think he's a terrible person. And I think anybody who claims to be a patriot and claims to love the country and claim to serve the country and serve the people, to then claim that one of the safest election systems in the world is rigged and won't shut up about it, it's just a truly terrible person. Okay, we literally have a minute left, but I want to play this clip from Mar-a-Lago where they had the Mother's Day lunch. But no sign of one of the most important mothers, and that's Melania Trump. Let's take a look. wonder if Luciano Pavarotti is aware that they're playing his tape.
That's what he's playing. That's right.
Right.
There are two reasons why I won't leave the Melania story alone and why I keep beating it over and over again. Number one, it annoys Trump and it annoys Trump supporters. When you point out that Melania is nowhere to be found, that this marriage is a sham, it's a fake marriage, there's no love between them, it aggravates them because they truly believe that they have this wonderful, warm relationship when we know that this is a lie and it's all made up. And so that's one reason why I continue to push it. The other reason is Trump continues to lie.
Yeah.
The night before this, the night before Mother's Day, he was at a rally and he said, I'm looking forward to Mother's Day. Shout out to my beloved wife, Melania. I'll be home soon, honey, is what he said to the rally crowd. And I can't wait to see you. And then he gets back, no Melania, nowhere to be found. So he continues to lie at his rallies. He continues to say, Melania is going to be on the campaign trail with me any day now. She'll be out here very soon, which we know she's never going to do that.
Well, he can't afford her now, right?
It's a lie.
She's expensive.
Right. So I just have to keep hammering this because regular media will not cover the Melania story.
Yeah.
They won't even talk about her. So I'm going to do it.
Well, they won't cover the rise of fascism and the fall of democracy either, but that's another story. Our final clip is ironic considering that Donald Trump was asking for time off from his criminal trial so he could attend Barron's graduation, right? This clip is of him not even knowing how old his own son is when talking about him. You can kind of explain what happens after we take a look. Here he is.
Because he's a very young guy, and he's graduating from high school this year. He's a very good student, very smart, and I think that's great. I think it's very interesting, too. But he's pretty young, I will say. He's 17. But if they can do that, I'm all for it. I think I'm all for it.
He's 18. Or maybe 15 or 16, but he's definitely tall. He's 6 foot something, taller than me. He's a very tall guy.
Every time Trump gets asked about Barron, he repeats the same thing, which is he's a good student and he's very tall.
He doesn't know anything about
what
his
he knows.
boy.
That's
Right.
pretty much
Yeah.
what he knows about Barron. But the context of that clip there from this week is that Barron was nominated to be a delegate at the Republican National Convention by somebody else. Clearly, nobody ran that by Melania. And what Melania knows is that Barron is hands off. Barron is not fair game. Nobody goes after Barron. Everybody leaves him alone because he's not involved in politics. But once he goes to that convention and becomes a delegate, Barron is now in the arena. Nobody knows that better than Melania. And as soon as Melania heard about this, she said, absolutely not, and pulled him out of it. So that's Trump there, though, right before Melania pulled him out, talking about Barron doing that and getting his age wrong.
I mean, I tweeted this or I X'd it, whatever I did with it recently, but I said that I really feel sorry for Barron here because he's having to see his dad in a criminal court over a story where he had an affair or he had a sexual encounter with a woman whilst Barron was just a few months old. You know, it must be very humiliating and very difficult for Barron as a young man to kind of grow up with this kind of childhood trauma, and he'll have to carry it for the rest of his life. I mean, aside from knowing that his father was trying to blow up the free world.
Yeah, well, we don't know a whole lot about Barron. I mean, we don't hear him. He doesn't have a whole lot to say publicly. So it's hard to say what kind of a person he is or what he thinks about anything because we just don't know. And that's fine with me. I'm perfectly happy not to know anything about Barron,
sure,
as long as he stays out of the political arena. Right.
Okay. We have to finish, but another great conversation. I look forward to it every week. My thanks to everybody who's watching and commenting. If you want to catch the audio podcast, you can do that. It drops later tonight, wherever you get yours. If you want to watch this again, then rewind when we've finished and start over. Don't forget to share it and comment below. You'll find the links to our sponsors there as well. Ron Filipkowski, a great pleasure. I'll see you next Wednesday at the same time.
You got it.